All right, so we are going to do the Unit 5 Scratch project today, which is actually going to be a Scratch project that we're going to keep developing through a few more chapters in second semester. So first thing you need to do is you need to go to the Unit 5 folder in Schoology, go to Scratch project, and then click on the starter code. When you click on that, it will bring up the geometry calculator shell code. So you need to make sure that you are signed in to your account right there. And then once you click see inside, you should be able to see an option to remix it. Now, I don't have that option on my screen up here, but you will see it on this top bar here because this is my own project, so I can't remix my own project. But otherwise, you should see that there, and you want to click it so that the code is now editable for you to work on. Okay, and once you're doing that, you might just want to share it right away. I'll go through that real quick right now, those steps, just to make sure it's shared, and then I'll do it at the end of the video as well. So see project page, go ahead and title it whatever you want to call it, geometry calculator, your last name, geometry calculator, whatever. And then you want to go down to add to studio down here, and you want to make sure you add it to the studio that is the Unit 5. It's not there. Unit 5 Geo Calculator Pythag is what I called it. Just note that this is obviously a different account and not in the classroom, which is why you don't see it, but you will definitely see it if you click Add to Studio. All right, we're going to go back inside, and we got three parts for this. So the first part is we want to create a Pythagorean theorem program using the blocks to the right. And this is going to be when we're missing the hypotenuse and we're trying to find what C is. So our second part is we're going to create a very similar Pythagorean theorem program, but this time when we have a side is missing. So let's say our B value or something like that is missing. And the very last thing we're going to do is we're going to have part 3, which here is to fill in the if statement to create a Pythagorean inequality program. We're going to use the green operator blocks. So we'll talk about that, all of that shortly. So let's first start here and kind of just do an overview of the program. So you'll see your shell here is going to contain 3 main areas. We have our Pythag equations, we have our area equations, and then we're going to have our volume and surface area as well. Like I said, this is going to be a project that we're going to keep building on throughout the entire year of geometry. So today we're only going to be working on missing leg, missing hypotenuse, and inequality. And in fact, there are these different sprites down here towards the bottom of the screen, but you won't actually need to even code in them. All that's there is just the basics to make this program work. Once again, the shell is here for you to make it work. All you need to do is click on this Scratch Bitmoji sprite, and you're good to go. So in this code here, the first one is we want to create a Pythagorean theorem program using the blocks to the right. So you won't need any other blocks or anything like that. You just need to put them in the right order and use them. At this point of the video, I would recommend pause it, play around with it, see if you can get it up and working. If you're able to get it working, then go ahead and use 3, 4, 5 to test out your program. And what I mean by that is that have A be 3, have B be 4, and check to see if your program comes out working as 5 is going to be your answer there. So once you get that working. All right, so if you've tried it and it's not working, then let's talk about it here. So the first thing that your program needs, right, if you were to figure out the equation, is you need to know what 3 squared plus 4 squared equals. I'm going to try and use this pen here and just write up here. We'll see how this works. So we want to know what 3 squared plus 4 squared is, and we want to find out what the missing hypotenuse is. So in order to try this, the first thing you need to know is you need to know your computer or your calculator needs information. And in this case, it needs to know what the 2 legs are going to be. So you want to first ask the computer, what is the length of the leg? Okay, what is our first A value? And it's great to just say 3, but you need to make sure that the the calculator assigns that variable to something. So what you're going to say is you're going to say set A, because this is going to be our A, right? Our first leg. And we're going to set that to the answer that we just asked. And then we also want to make sure that we show it on the screen. Cool. And that's how we're going to get some information from the user and be able to use that information to do the actual calculation that's necessary. All right, the next thing we want to do is we want to ask about the other piece of information we know, which is the other leg. So once again, we want to ask, what is it? We want to set that answer. So set our B variable to that answer. And then we're also going to show that variable on our screen. Perfect. And so the thing is now is, what do we want to do now? And we want to figure out what our C value is, right? We want to know what it is. So we're actually going to set our C variable to something. And the question is, what is that something? And that's what makes this tough. So if I'm doing this math, let's go through and let's rework the problem. So I have 3 squared plus 4 squared equals, we'll say, we'll call it C, since that's what we're calling the program, C squared. Okay, so if I'm solving this problem manually, what's the first thing that we're doing, right? We're figuring out what 3 squared is. 3 squared is 9, and 4 squared is 16. So where are those blocks, and how am I going to do that with these blocks? Now, it's weird that there is no square in Scratch, but there actually is just a way to do it, which is just taking A times A and B times B. All right, perfect. So we have done this. We've done A times A. We've done B times B. Now, what's the next thing that we would do for this equation to solve it? Oh, we would add those two numbers, right? 9 plus 16 is 25. So then what piece of code block are we going to use in order to show that we're adding those numbers? We're going to use the plus. And you can see it's circular, which means we need to put a circular thing in here. So we could just type a number if we wanted to, 5. Or we could put a variable. Let's say we could put an A in there, right? Or we can put another operator in there. So I'm actually going to take it, and I want this left corner, this very left corner here, I want that to sneak into the hole, and you can see it kind of illuminate as well. And there we go. And same thing for B. This part's a little bit tough sometimes, but you want to just grab on the green bar. So grab right in the middle, and then you're going to insert it. So just the left end is highlighting the circle, and then unclick, and you're good to go. All right. At this step of our problem, the next thing we would do to solve for C is we are going to square root our answer. Square root our answer. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the square root block. Once again, I'm going to grab right in the middle of this green block, which is the plus sign. I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to put it so just the left end fits into the circle, and let go. And now we have the square root of A squared plus B squared, which is exactly what C equals. And I can click and drag. Once again, you want to grab everything. So if you just grab the plus sign, it's just going to pull it out. But you want to just grab the word of is a good way of doing it, and put it so just the left end is in the circle. Boom. So we have now set C to the square root of A squared plus B squared, which is what our math tells us to do. All right. So after we've done that, we're going to want to pull down our blocks and make sure that the computer knows the answer, but we need to output it to the user. So we're going to show what C is. We are going to say what C is. And then the sprite's going to be like, hey, click me to restart and do something again. So if we want to test our program, I'll hit the green flag. We'll click missing hypotenuse. and it says, what is the length of leg A? And I can type in 3, press enter, and you can see that it shows what A is right there. What is the length of the other leg? So we can say 4, press enter, and you'll see that it says that the answer is 5. It also shows the answer right here, and then click me to restart, and we go back to this. So hopefully your program is doing that. All right, so the next two things we have to do here are when I receive missing leg. This is going to be very, very similar to the code that we just did up here, but this time it's going to be going a little backwards. So if I take this equation that I just wrote out and I erase this and I erase this and I turn this into B and I turn this into 5, you can go through the steps that you would in order to solve it. And it's going to be a little bit different. So this part of your code, when we do the square root and when we actually do the calculation, this part right here is going to be just a little bit different than it was above. So that's kind of the first part that you have to do on your own. And then the third part is the Pythagorean theorem inequalities. And if you remember, there's a way to tell based on the sides. This was in 5.7. If the triangle is going to be right, obtuse, or acute based on the 3 sides. So I've done the basic part of the program for you, which is just asking the questions. So ask, what is the length of the small side? What is the length of the medium side? And what is the length of the largest side? So that's all just basic, and it's very similar to what we did up here. But it's your job now to do the calculation part of this. So you're going to say, if blank, then it's a right triangle. Okay? If blank, it's an obtuse, and if blank, then it's an acute triangle. So you're going to want to come over here to the green. You're going to be doing a lot of this stuff here, and you notice a greater than, a less than block, and an equal block, which is what you're going to use for this program and for your calculations. So that is the program. I'm going to stop there. You need to make sure that you finish part 2 and part 3. Part 1 is complete. I highly recommend that you test out your Pythagorean calculator by hitting missing leg. When you do that, you should get, you can test 3 and 5 to get 4. And if you want to test inequality, you can test 3, 4, 5 for a right triangle. You could test 3, 4, 6 for an obtuse triangle, and you could test 3, 4, 4 for an acute triangle. And if those pass those tests, then you're probably doing okay. And then once again, the last steps to make sure that you submit it so it's something I can see. You want to go to your C project page. You want to make sure it's shared. You'll see somewhere up here where it'll ask you to share it if it's not. If you cannot see Add to Studio down here, it either means you're not signed in, which hopefully by now you are, or it means it hasn't been shared. So make sure that you do one of those two things. Rename your project, and then click Add to Studio and add it to the Unit 5. Make sure it turns green, and then hit OK after you're done. So it's the Unit 5 Geo Calculator Pythag is what we're doing. And the surprise here is that you can use this as you're doing the test on Friday. So feel free to use this as you're working. And by using it, you should be able to make sure and verify and guarantee that your answers are correct.